All right, episode 174, a special midweek episode, which we're trying because it's less than 7 weeks until Election Day, and just a lot of shit's happening real fast. But Lance and I are both a little tired, so we'll see how it goes. But we're only going to go for an hour or so. I I had a consequence of me being pissed off about Trump getting elected was I decided to get politically involved. So I joined my neighborhood council, which is like city council except less powerful for the neighborhood of Studio City. Last night we had a 5-hour Zoom city council meeting, which was, I don't know, that's a long-ass meeting. A fly kept trying to get into my coffee. I kept shooing it away, and I drank all the way down to the bottom of my coffee where I found the fly dead. So that was my adventure last night.
But here's the thing. Because it was a Zoom meeting, every time Rick tried to shoo the fly away, they thought he was voting for capital punishment for all Democrats and homeless people. So because he kept moving his hand, they didn't know what he... Yeah. So
that's more true than you think.
A lot of amazing laws were passed because of that fly and Rick's wild moving of hands. They thought he was voting. Yeah. All right. So
now, let's see what. Also, like, as members of the public are invited to comment, and our most consistent commenter is named. He goes by different names. Last night he was Black Puppet, and he talked in a black voice, and then he got tired of that and he went to Goat Puppet and he talked in a goaty voice. And he just rips on everybody and talks about how stupid and greedy we are. So, all right. I read a study.
Rick, now that you're in power, I just want you to know the people need a firm hand.
Well, you know what? I'm pretty pro-business. My stepdad, well, both my dads, my dad and my stepdad were both small businessmen. And we've got a famous hotel here called the Sportsman's Lodge. It's been around for, I don't know, probably 70, 80 years. And it's huge. And it used to have a giant event center with a lagoon and swans and ducks and a little artificial river and a lake. And they're keeping the hotel part, but they got rid of the event center part, and they're putting up one of these, newfangled, not an old-fashioned strip center, but a newfangled like the Grove or the Americana with all sorts of upscale dining and shopping, with an Erewhon grocery. And you would have been proud of me because we kind of semi-approve liquor licenses for new establishments. And, some of my more liberal brethren on the council were saying, no, this is just going to increase congestion and drunk driving and noise for the neighborhood. And I just went ahead and I voted for all the restaurant and liquor sales licenses.
Great. I think that's great, Rick.
Well, I mean, none of it, like, we're talking about, like, Sugarfish Sushi wants to serve, beer and sake. I'm fine with that. Plus, I grew up in the bloodbath discos of the 80s. I worked at America's largest outdoor beer garden that held the world record for serving 50,000 drinks to 10,000 customers in a single day. And, a few people having, sake with their yellowtail is nothing compared to the forfers that were served in 1982.
Wow. Geez. Well, I mean, Rick, I'm glad that you were a city council person that didn't stand in the way of a small businessman trying to make a buck. That's what I as a Republican, it warms my heart.
Yeah, but you know what? I talked this over with Carol before the meeting, and I have reservations. And it's not that people will overdrink sake. It's that most small businesses and most restaurants, I think we're just seeing your shirt. Oh, there you are. Most, they fail at a huge rate. Like over 90%, I think, for, within a year. And I feel bad that I am enabling people to, Sugarfish will be okay. Sugarfish is, one of the most popular sushi places in LA. It's well regarded for a good reason. But some of these other places, like, they're going to be gone in 6 months, especially trying to open up at, by the time they get done with the center and everything, it'll be, I hope, the tail end of COVID. But still, people will still be, the country will be feeling bruised. The way your head feels the day after you have to have a huge headache. The nation will feel beaten up by the events of the past few years. And I don't know, will people want to go to rest? I don't know. I just know that it makes me feel bad to facilitate people, sinking their life savings into something that may not go. Though that is entrepreneurialism. And
I would just like to say that it's a good thing that Sugarfish gave you $10,000 to vote yes on their liquor license. So, that really helps.
Yeah, that's what Goat Puppet accused us of. What
Really?
Sugarfish does give you, Sugarfish gives you birthday sushi. If you eat there enough times during the year, on your birthday, you get a free dinner. Which is
well, so we're all,
high. And now in the takeout era,
we're all being bribed. Then we're all compromised. All of us are getting something from sugar sushi or whatever. So all right. So now you had something devastating you were going to say to me.
It's not devastating. Well, it's just that I read a summary of a study that came out in August. That is one more reason to wear masks, which is that the bigger, and I've said this before, but this study really showed the statistics, and they're horrifying. The more of an infective dose of the COVID you get, the more you die. That if you get just a little baby dose, your odds of dying of it are 1/3. They call it viral load, which, load is appropriate because if you get hit in the face with a bunch of COVID, you're 3 times as likely to die with a heavy load as a light load. Which is one more
that's the money shot.
Where, you may not prevent yourself or other people from being entirely, you may not shut down infection entirely, but you may reduce the number of fucking virus particles you get hit with, and it may mean you get a light dose with 12% mortality versus a heavy dose with 38% mortality, among people who get hospitalized.
All right. Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, you can argue this both ways. That you can argue this in favor of opening up with precautions. That your side has been arguing that, that asymptomatic is no big deal, and we've been saying no, asymptomatic still spreads the fucking disease. But if reasonable precautions, it turns out the latest studies say, you don't need to wash your groceries. Washing your hands is sufficient. That the COVID doesn't live very long on doorknobs. Don't worry about shit like that. Just worry about masking up and social distancing. And if you can, meet with people outside instead of inside where the shit recirculates because it floats in the air for a long time. So, in there is an argument for taking reasonable precautions and not freaking out, and looking at it like we're just living under different circumstances, but it doesn't have to be a full fucking shutdown.
Well, thank you. I would, on that note, moving right along, there was a report, my favorite topic, theme parks, are now pissed off at the governor of California because they're basically going out of business. They and the city of Anaheim, where all the theme parks are in California, a lot of them anyway, have made a formal request to the governor that you have to explain to us what we're supposed to do for you to allow us to open up. They've offered to let him tour the facilities, but their argument, which is actually a legal one, is that their restrictions are arbitrary and unfair because there are many parts of California where you can go inside a restaurant and you can go inside a store if you're wearing a mask. And basically a theme park is just that with rides. And there's really no science to prove that you can get the China virus on a roller coaster.
I'll agree with that.
So, I mean, it's become absurd. And what I like about this is that Disney is a huge supporter of the Democrats. And now they are facing a 50% reduction in profits, which most companies wouldn't be able to handle. They are basically furious. And to give you another idea, this isn't just for people that want to go on roller coasters like me. The city of Anaheim is a large city. It has a few 100,000 people in it, and they are going under. Basically, they're the mayor of Anaheim, and I don't know if he's a Democrat or a Republican, is basically saying to the governor, look, this whole city is going under because there are at least 100,000 jobs dependent on the theme parks, maybe 200,000, because not only is the theme park affected, but all the businesses and hotels around it.
And the tax base, the whole
yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. And the gas stations, restaurants, tourism, everything's going under. So what I really like this because it exposes how arbitrary and cruel the Democrats are. The governor had actually said, they've asked him several times over the past few months, when are you going to open the theme parks? And he kept saying, well, we're in big negotiations with them right now. We're having talks, productive talks. And the letter that was sent to the governor that recently basically indicated you're not in talks with us at all. You haven't done anything. You haven't. I mean, if you read between the lines, they're saying we have no guidance. So he's lying. He doesn't care, and the lockdown is arbitrary, capricious, and cruel.
All right, so let's provide guidance. People should know. If you're new to the show, you should know that Lance loves theme parks. He's been a season ticket holder to Knott's Berry Farm and to Disneyland, and has worked at Disneyland, and you know these parks backwards, forwards, upside down. You will buttonhole the CEO of Knott's when you see him and tell him what you like and don't like. But I've got some immediate guidance, which is what we've learned from fucking COVID science, which is, still a young fucking thing, is that your chances of catching it out if you're moving at a decent clip outside, your chances of getting it are pretty low. If you're not in a super big crowd, so roller coasters are outside. Like Magic Mountain is largely like a roller coaster joint, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Yes.
Magic Mountain seems like a place where, with reasonable precautions, people are masked up. Maybe there's a little bit of distancing on the roller coaster. Maybe it's every other row. Shit like that. Everybody's masked up. Did I say that? And,
Yeah.
no barfing, because barf is, COVID barf is terrible. But outdoor shit should be okay. Indoor shit is trickier. Like maybe you don't let people at Disneyland go on It's a Small World, which is a slow-moving inside ride. I think Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is inside, right? But the teacup.
They should divide the rides up into COVID safe and
Yeah, but
slightly more treacherous.
like the spaceships in Tomorrowland where you're driving them around, you're not going to catch COVID on those things because everybody's whipping around at 25 miles an hour in midair. So I don't know. It seems like you open up the joints. You make sure. Now, I would say that theme parks, being a wholesome, all-American thing, are going to attract a lot of middle Americans, and middle Americans tend to be less more skeptical of masks than, say, your average Los Angeles person. So you'd need some reasonable mask enforcement, and in the case of Disney, where like a day pass is like what, $180 now.
Right. It can be if you go to both parks.
Okay, so maybe you offer Disney in the time of trouble discounted passes, because maybe a third of the rides are off limits because they're too slow moving and inside.
Well, I mean, they're already open in Florida. They've been open for about a month in Florida. So they have a whole system where they can have social distancing, they can have 100% mask wearing, they can do a lot of things. My situation is that, because it all comes down to me, is I can't lose now. If things go well, the theme parks will open up. If they don't go well, the theme parks will be at war with the Democrats. So the idea of Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm and Universal Studios, they're all great theme parks, fighting the ultimate evil, the Democrats. I mean, this is a Game of Thrones level drama. They are threatening to go to court, basically. Because you can't do this anymore. Not only can you not put hundreds of thousands of people out of work, but you can't. I have always maintained that there will be a point where someone will raise the issue of, what is the science here? If you're going to shut down my business, you have to prove that I'm injuring people. Recently in Pennsylvania, I believe, there was a lawsuit that won, where the people, the businessmen, the small businesses in Pennsylvania actually sued the governor, saying, look, since when did you get emergency powers forever? I mean, where does it say in the Constitution that if there is a very severe flu season, or, as Rick would say, a deadly 100-year pandemic, suddenly the governor gets to seize power, and we've got the same rights as they do in North Korea? And the judge in that case ruled for the small businesses and saying, look, governors don't have all power forever because there's an epidemic.
Oh yeah.
Our director just asked a question. That's why we went silent. He mentioned that
He or she, our director remains anonymous.
Uh, he he
Or
said
she.
that William Barr, the Attorney General, said that these lockdowns are the worst abuse of civil liberties since slavery, and that the BLM movement is using black people as props. The Black Lives Matter movement. So, Rick, do you have anything to say about that?
I just want to revisit Disney for half a second, then I'll react to the other stuff. I was ready to hate Disney World opening up in Orlando, Florida, because I think the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, is a Trumpy moron who's done a lot to have COVID not be controlled in Florida. But the pictures I saw coming out of Disney World, were not hopeless. I was reasonably impressed with the measures that Disney had taken. I still think the governor's an asshole, but Disney, I thought, was doing a almost decent job of keeping people safe within the park. And if they can do it in Florida, they can do it in Anaheim.
Well, the interesting thing about that, the subject did come up on the news. There haven't been any outbreaks that are linked to to theme parks. They've linked very easily outbreaks to openings of colleges and universities,
Yeah,
but
there's a
not theme
wedding out
parks.
of Maine that's getting a lot of publicity that infected over 100 people and killed like 7.
Hmm. Well, anyway, as far as
Well,
the
you asked me to react to Barr, and I got it
yes,
like
go ahead.
Barr. There was this movie called They Live in the 70s. Remember where the guy gets? There was also V. There were these alien invasion movies where at some point the aliens take off their masks. That they looked human, but they're not. Um, um, and Barr's mask is off now. There are like 46 days until the election, and he's just saying whatever the fuck comes into his head. And yeah, so when Barr says shit like this, now I think the guiding principle for me, at least, until the election is nothing. I mean, shit has to be way over the top to matter at all. So like my liberal media was delighted that Barr was saying this shit because it sounds, at least to liberals, comparing wearing masks to being enslaved sounds just like outrageous, like just fucking, Barr being a crazy fuckhead. Um, but in reality, Barr can say exactly what he thinks, no matter how horrible liberals think it is, and nobody's mind is going to be changed. That's more and more on Twitter. I'm wasting my time replying to partisan tweets saying, whose mind is this going to change? Fucking Jenna, whatever her name, a Trumper, can post, here's Biden rocking out to I don't know, they put a different, oh, fuck the police. Biden was moving a little bit during a public appearance to some other song, and some Trump people replaced the song with fuck the police, and the Trump people posted it, and it's like, whose mind is that going to change? It's like, oh, I mean, so in general, Barr can say this outrageous shit. Nobody's being persuaded.
Well, as far as Barr, I believe he wasn't referring to wearing masks. He was referring to the shutdown of the entire economy for several months, and for uh, uh, to a large extent, the rest of the society since March. Um, the schools are closed. The uh, Many types of businesses have never reopened. Uh, I mean, it's been and all on this kind of weird, sloppy science. We keep finding out that the Democrats that make these orders don't go along with them themselves. They're hypocrites. They sneak out and get their hair done. Pelosi and the mayor of Chicago, even though they won't let anybody else get their hair done, I
Carol
mean,
got her hair cut
that's
yesterday.
nothing. Yeah. Well, actually, in line with what Barr said, I have a question for you. Um, you've sort of agreed with me that these riots um, are pretty much associated with the left, and I just wanted to say
Well, no, I haven't
the
agreed. I mean,
Democrat.
okay, the protests are from the left, and then when it comes to rioting, I don't know the statistics, but certainly you've got all sorts of agents provocateurs in there fucking with shit for their own. Like, I mean, there are, on the fringes of politics, both on the right and the left, you have assholes, right? I mean, uh,
Okay,
for
Rick,
every
I'll
three.
cut to the chase.
Okay, all
You
right, go
think that
ahead.
half of the protesters are Trump supporters, right? That are out murdering and tearing, burning down cities in America. Probably two-thirds are Trump supporters, in your opinion, right?
No, no, But
Well,
but I
look,
am going to
I'll
say
just
I don't know the statistics.
okay. Well, I can tell you some statistics, all right, or at least some facts. If you go to the Black Lives Matter website and the Antifa website, Antifa, um, they both have uh, they both have instructions on how you can contribute to the Biden campaign. And there's
I'm not
also,
arguing that I mean, the protesters are overwhelmingly liberal.
oh, okay, very good. So I wanted to bring this up to you. Kamala Harris uh, was very much supportive of the protests and riots. And we know that because she actually did some tweets where she included an organization that you could go to where you could contribute money to bail out rioters that had been captured by the police. And
I'm
today was
semi-familiar with that, though I have
you
questions
good,
about it.
good, all right. Well, today was a special day because there was an article about how some of these protesters were unbelievably violent criminals, and in fact, one of them raped a child. So if you give money to this organization that Kamala Harris supports, that money will be given to bail out child rapists.
So I don't know that story, so I don't know the details. But my question is, yeah, this organization, how do they decide who to bail out? And
Well,
you probably don't
that's
know
not.
either, except for this one example, or maybe several examples of bad guys who apparently got bailed out.
Well, they had to have been captured, apparently, according to the whole ethos of this endeavor. They had to have been rioters that were captured by the police. In fact, the name of it is called the Minnesota Freedom Fund. And Kamala Harris has been a big supporter. And even though this article has been out for a while, she hasn't taken down her tweets that support this fund. and list it as a place for you to go. The woman that you're voting for that will be president when Biden dies or becomes, removed from office, that woman supports a fund that is bailing out child rapists. So now you're on the side of child rapists, Rick.
Well, I don't know, because you just brought it up, and I don't know what the details are, and I mean, you're just, I have to read the article and see what that's what I always say. I mean,
yeah, I know, but what's interesting to me is that your media kept you from knowing this.
Well, no, I said I know some of it. I didn't know this latest example. But the deal is that, like, I saw statistics on how many Americans had protested over the past 6 months, and it's in the tens of millions, the estimate. And it's not tens of millions of lawless rioters. I don't know how many out of the protesters. Like, I've been to protests. I was a protest of a protester because I was an asshole. I protested the protest with my frat brothers when I was in a frat because I just thought it was stupid fun to get everybody riled up. And I wasn't doing anything wrong. And the protesters at Rocky Flats in Colorado, where they were making nuclear triggers for nuclear missiles, none of the protesters were burning shit or doing anything wrong. They were protesting that there's a factory that makes nuclear bombs, 15 miles outside of Boulder. And similarly, the vast majority of these protesters are not lawless criminals. On Fox, there's the same way that liberal news is all COVID all the time. Fox is, it's not all riots all the time, but the coverage is much heavier of rioting on your channels than on my channels.
Now, may I respond, or are you done?
Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of meandering.
Okay.
I mean, except to say that you can protest, and you can support these causes, and it doesn't mean you're fucking burning down Foot Lockers to steal tennis shoes.
Well, actually, it does, Rick, because the Minnesota Freedom Fund that Kamala Harris supported was only for people that had been arrested by the police and needed to be bailed out in Minnesota. So, in other words, they weren't one of the hundreds of thousands of protesters that were outraged by what they imagined was police brutality. It was the actual rioters that had been burning down businesses and attacking people.
Well, that's what I'd have to read about, because
well, you don't actually. Actually, you could just understand this. These were not nice people. Kamala Harris wanted to give money to bail out people. The small number that the Minnesota Police Department had actually put in jail. The Minnesota Police Department had been told to stand down by their mayor, but they managed to get a few of the really bad eggs, and your candidate decided to give money to those individuals. Against
one of the reasons.
No, you're interrupting me. I'll let you talk. I even let you meander.
Okay.
So my point is this. I knew that you would say, well, a lot of the protesters were peaceful. And so how did she know?
True.
How did she know that they were going to fund a child rapist? And I realized that, well, for the same reason that I didn't have a fund to get rioters out of jail, for the same reason that all reasonable people would not have supported those people burning down cities. But Kamala Harris, the woman that you're going to have as president, she was so dumb and so evil that she was so much in support of those rioters that were burning down cities that she actually tried to get money and it turned out to be millions of dollars to them so that they wouldn't have to go to jail. So what I'm saying is either she's so stupid that she didn't know that people burning down Minnesota were bad people, or she did know and she wanted to help them anyway.
All right. So the hidden assumption, and it's not very hidden, is that getting arrested automatically makes you a bad rioter. One of the reasons for the rioting or the protesting is all the video we've seen of cops taking down people who apparently aren't doing anything besides protesting. And we can, if you want, we can break, but I don't want to break because we're only going to go an hour tonight. But I can read up on the organization and who got let out, and we can talk about it when we meet again in 3 days. But, you know, I doubt some of the details of what you're saying. And my second thing is, whose mind is this going to change? That Kamala Harris put up a link to an organization that was bailing out protesters. Who's going to, I mean, the criticisms of Kamala Harris have come from both sides, that she's this crazy liberal in favor of burning the cities, or that she's been this cop who put too many, as Attorney General, who put too many innocents in jail for smoking pot. And so the accusations fly around, but I've seen just as much coverage of that she wears Converse tennis shoes, and that she, you know, that she's really spry when she comes down the stairs when she gets off a plane. Like, she just runs down the fucking stairs, and people love that, you know, that there's that somebody's running for office is less than 70 years old. At this point, like, I don't know if our show has ever changed anybody's mind. And at this point, like, who, you know, what the fuck are we doing?
Well, I think it's very interesting that you know about her gait as she jumps down the stairs of an airplane and what shoes she wears, but you didn't know that she was bailing out people that were burning down our cities.
I knew that there's this organization that is where people contribute to get people bailed out.
Yeah, and I mean, my question is, there are certainly, you automatically are arguing that not all of the people that were put in jail are guilty, but I mean, the cities are getting burned down. There are fires and riots. You know, 30 cops have been murdered by your rioters, Democrats.
I will argue that statistic, though.
Well, no, there are 30 cops that have been murdered. I mean, they just shot a couple today or over the weekend.
Oh no, over the weekend they weren't murdered. They survived. They were lucky. I mean, that was.
Yeah. But my point is that I think a responsible politician would have assumed that the cops were putting people in jail for some reason, that not all of the rioters that were put in jail were innocent, and would have been very reluctant to start a fund to bail these people out. It seems to me very peculiar that when cities around the United States are burning and cops are being murdered and people that are innocent are being beaten up and having their neighborhoods destroyed irreparably in most
hold on.
cases.
Let's clarify this.
It's strange to me. It's strange to me that the future president would be trying to bail out the few people that the police managed to put in jail.
Again, this is something I got to read up on. But you said 30 cops have been murdered. It hasn't been 30. It has been some. It might even be a dozen or 15. 35 people have been killed in the riots so far in America in the past 6 months, I believe. And some of them are cops. Some of them are, people at protests. I would say that, I'd say most of them are are people killed by rioters, I would guess. I mean, that would have to be.
So why would Kamala Harris be trying to bail them out?
Well, I'm sure she doesn't bail out. She doesn't intend to bail anyway.
Why does she get involved in bailing out people that are arrested during riots, Rick?
Because as I've argued, that most of the feeling is, and I haven't read up on it to know the actual statistics, that many and perhaps most of the people arrested weren't doing anything. They were exercising their First Amendment rights, and they were not burning down fucking.
Why do you have any reason to believe that the police arrested mostly innocent people? That's not borne out. Rick. In any statistic that's ever been made about arrests, the odds are very low that the police are arresting people that are innocent. Most of the time, in every study they've ever done, the majority of people being arrested were arrested for good cause.
Then you should show me those studies, because the protests themselves are about people protesting the cops exercising undue force, which includes arresting people who shouldn't be arrested.
That's true, but given that the cities are being burned down.
Yeah, but how much? I've looked at how much of the cities are being burned down, and it's not much.
Actually, it was several $1 billion worth of damage. Several $1 billion. And that number came out today, by the way.
Okay, so you should provide me with a link to that.
I don't need to.
Or I can look it up, because it came out today. I didn't read anything on it.
But my argument is this. Now, your argument is even more weird than what Kamala Harris's argument is. Your argument is that the police are arresting mostly innocent people during these riots. Is that your argument, Rick? Because in every study,
I'd say that they're mostly protests, and the people, I would assume, without having studied it, the people arrested are mostly not guilty of anything particularly bad.
Okay, so during the riots, where the cities are burning and people are being assaulted and murdered, it is your contention that most of the people that the police are arresting are innocent and deserve to be bailed out.
I don't know, but I don't know.
Do you have any reason to believe that?
I don't know, but I would think so.
Okay, all right. Do you have any reason to believe that, Rick?
Just of all the footage I've seen, and of course the footage I see is, I follow, I don't know, 1,600 people on Twitter. Most of those people lean left, so most of the stuff and Twitter's where I see most of the stuff, or I'll see a link on Twitter and then I'll follow it to an article or to a video. So of course what I see is going to show, cops yelling at people to move back. People don't move back fast enough. The cops tackle them and arrest them. There was this whole thing over the weekend where there was a female reporter who got taken down by 4 LA County Sheriff's deputies. She was pressed. She yelled that she was pressed. She didn't move out of their way fast enough for their liking. They tackled her and they took her in. And the liberal side says, well, she yelled she's pressed. She held up her press ID, and they still tackled her and arrested her, and that's bullshit. But I read a zillion comments from the other side who said, well, fucking, she was right in the way of an arrest of somebody else, and they were yelling at her to get out of the way, and the cops tell you to do something and you don't, you're going to get arrested. So obviously there are 2 huge sides to this whole fucking thing. Obviously I'm going to see the stuff that shows the cops overstepping their authority. And so based on all that I've seen, I'm going to think the cops are arresting among the people who are arrested are people who, were mostly exercising their First Amendment rights. And sure, some rioters with big stacks of shoes, I'm sure, were among the arrested. But somebody who happens to, I've seen footage of, these people just driving through a riot zone, maybe inadvertently ending up in it, and the cops yanking them out of the car as if they're rioters, and they looked blameless and just like people who stupidly or accidentally ended up in the wrong, so you asked where my feeling comes from. That's where it comes from the media I consume. And is my media accurate? I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that I'm certain, this is the Minnesota Freedom Fund, I'm certain that Minnesota burned during the riots, and I'm certain that many cities in America burned. And I'm certain that a lot of people were killed and injured.
We know how many people were killed, 35 people.
Okay. And I'm certain that when the cops arrest people, I'm going to go with the belief that the vast majority of the time it's for good reason. And I think it's incredibly sick that the woman that's going to be president is trying to bail out people that were probably burning down cities in America. And I think it's very interesting for me that you've been so badly brainwashed that now you think that when the police arrest somebody, they're probably wrong. They're probably arresting the person for no reason. They're probably innocent. That's what you're going with from now on.
Well, we can argue about innocent, but maybe okay, so the cops yell at you to move back, and you're like, fuck you, I'm not moving back, and they arrest you. So that's not innocent, but it's not, guilty of burning a fucking thing. And could you be bailed out and not? Could you bail somebody who does that out and you not be a fucking monster who's for the overthrow of America? Yeah, you can bail somebody out who yells at the cops and gets arrested.
Yeah, but that's not what happened, Rick. There are people watching this right now that live in cities that burned, where these riots happened and got out of control. And now you think that the future president, Kamala Harris, should be trying to bail out the people that committed those crimes.
I should mention, I watched Biden's town hall tonight for about half an hour.
All right, we can leave this subject. Go ahead.
Okay, and you say that Biden at some point, you imply that he won't last 4 years as president, and then that Kamala Harris will become president.
Yes, he's senile.
Yeah, but how much Biden have you watched that hasn't been edited? Not much. So
I've seen hours of Biden. I don't know,
But I don't know. I watched his town hall.
How much do you have to watch before you realize the man is senile?
But he's not. He knows statistics. He knows a gazillion times more shit about COVID than fucking Trump does. He knows the science. He knows the statistics. He knows he can. When asked about that shit, he can talk about it for a long time, and he doesn't hesitate, any more than I do. Maybe he should hesitate less, because I'm not a trained public speaker. But, he doesn't sound. He sounds like he knows his shit. It seems he knows his shit. I watched him. He's.
Can I respond? Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. You do know that he's using a teleprompter, right?
He's not.
They've proven that.
He's not using a teleprompter at a town hall.
Yeah. It turns out, Rick, I don't know if you know this, but the questions are being fed to him by people that they've already proven it. There have been questioners that admitted that the news media gave them the questions which were fed to Biden before the meetings and before the interviews.
I've seen, I think Laura Ingraham, maybe somebody
No,
tweet.
but I've seen it,
tweet
I've seen it, Rick, don't interrupt me. I've seen it probably 5 times now, where in various situations they caught the teleprompter. They caught him either looking at a teleprompter or an image of the teleprompter came up in a that wasn't supposed to be pictured. They've had times when he spoke to the teleprompter, not realizing that he was being filmed. They've had questioners from these audiences come forward and admit that they were fed the questions and that he was fed the answers by a teleprompter.
I think that's bullshit. I watched it tonight. I think it was on CNN, and they showed a tight shot, and then they showed medium shots, and then they showed a wide shot, and there wasn't teleprompter stuff. There wasn't teleprompter apparatus at the town hall, and to claim that there was is just conspiracy theory with nothing behind it. Maybe he's had teleprompters and other shit. He didn't have it tonight at this fucking thing.
Well, how do you know?
But I also read about the questioning tonight, and you can make a better case that instead of it being a conspiracy, that there was a liberal bias to the questioners. I went on Fox News, so you couldn't play gotcha with me as much tonight, and I read an article about how 16 people asked questions tonight of Biden, and only 3 of them were Republican. So, I mean, okay, that seems like a reasonable argument for you to make, that why give him fucking friendly questioners like that? And then they compared it to when Trump got questioned at his town hall, and apparently more people were Democrats among the questioners than were Republicans among Biden's. So that seems like a legitimate issue to raise. But as far as him being, knowing the questions ahead of time, I don't know, maybe, but you don't need to know the questions ahead of time. Are people going to ask about jobs? Are they going to ask about COVID? Are they, yeah. And you don't need to know the questions ahead of time to know what types of questions people are likely to ask. So yeah, he's going to be prepared for that shit. I don't.
Well, I mean, over the course of the year, I've brought up, I think anybody that only gets interviewed by friendly audiences with teleprompters that are cleverly hidden and questioners.
Teleprompters tonight, and that's just conspiracy bullshit. And you didn't even watch the show. I watched the
Rick, it's not bullshit when I can show you there are photographs of him looking at a teleprompter. I've seen them. Where the teleprompter somehow made it into the shot and it wasn't supposed to be there.
Okay.
It's not conspiracy bullshit when somebody comes forward and says, yeah, I was handed the questions and he knew which questions to ask. And that the news media helped me with this.
Have you read any articles about tonight's town hall? There's no way you have.
I have not. But I'll tell you something, Rick. If you wish to believe that Joe Biden isn't mentally deteriorated, then I just don't think you're working at this. I don't think you're being honest, or maybe you're just being too lazy to really look at the situation.
No, because I look for
carefully staged.
Hold fucking Joe Biden's 77. If he gets elected, I think he turns 78 before he becomes president. So yeah, and also he has a stutter. Also, he's never been the most fluid public speaker. So, yeah, sometimes there are pauses and there's, I don't know, choppiness, or he'll repeat a word. But I watch him when I watch him pretty closely to see if there are moments which can be, edited to show him, looking bewildered. And there are
Yeah.
certainly moments that can be taken out of context um, to do that. But overall, I mean, all those moments seem natural to me watching a guy in his 70s talking who's not debilitated. Now, I
Okay.
watch myself. Hold on. I'm 60 years old. I really like having a brain that works, so I watch myself with the same scrutiny I'll watch Biden. And I get a little worried, like I'll watch a movie, I'll watch Boogie Nights, and for a few minutes it takes me a long time to remember Julianne Moore's name. And it's like, fuck, it's like Julie what? Julie Brown, and it takes like, the first, it took me a while to remember Julianne Moore. And does that mean that my brain's getting older and getting shittier? I don't know. Or have I always had a little bit of difficulty? I mean, at one time on a game show 20 years ago, I fucked up because I couldn't remember Penny Marshall's name. And she was huge. She was Laverne. I guess she was Laverne, right? She wasn't Shirley. I think she was. Anyway, huge director, directed. No, that was Gary Marshall No, she directed the No Crying in Baseball, A League of Their Own. See, it takes like, is that shit like that? Like, does that mean that I'm losing it, or I don't know? But I don't think Biden is fucking losing it.
Okay. Can I talk now? I'm
Yeah.
going to talk, and don't interrupt me.
Okay.
So the purpose of this show, the reason I'm doing this show, is to convince people to vote for Trump. And if you think, I've made this suggestion before, but it bears repeating, there is a clip of Biden talking to a group of African American children at I believe, a recreation center.
And he talks about his legs.
Yeah. Yeah, you said you wouldn't interrupt me, Rick.
Did I? I don't know.
You just did. Anyway.
I interrupted. I don't know if I said I wouldn't interrupt
you. Okay, let's try this again, Rick. I am trying to convince people to vote for Trump. So I'm not trying to convince you, Rick. I'm trying to convince the viewers. And if the viewers want to know whether Biden appears to be mentally deteriorating, they should watch a clip. All you have to do is type this in to the internet, the hairy leg speech of Joe Biden. And what happens is he's talking to a group of African American children at some sort of park. And he begins to talk about his days as a lifeguard when he had very hairy legs. Don't interrupt me, Rick. And he talks about how the children would come up and rub their hands against his blonde hair on his legs. And then he starts talking about how he likes children to sit on his lap and that he's proud. He says, "Oh, I like children sitting on my lap." And then he goes on to say something about, and that's why he believes in rights for black people or something crazy. Now, here's the thing about the story. Number one, no presidential candidate would tell this story. But number two, it didn't make any sense. And even, don't interrupt me, even if you were doing our show, even though, Rick, you tell some of the most meandering and perverse stories on YouTube, they still make sense. When you listen to this story from Biden, you realize that this doesn't make sense. It's inappropriate.
slightly tone deaf, I think, at least according to the most stringent, standards applied today, where this, I think, African American woman asked him something that was, the gist was, what about black people? And Biden answered in a way. He said, I've got long-standing experience with black people. I get black people. And then he veered into, he understands what it can be like because he's from Scranton. And apparently, he didn't use the term white trash, but that's what he was talking about. But people looked down on him and his family because they were from Scranton, and it was a town, a working class town with high unemployment, and he heard the shit they said about people from Scranton. So was it a little tone deaf for him to compare his situation as white trash to black people? I thought a little bit, but at the same time I could understand it, and it wasn't senseless. It was just a guy who's fucking 77, putting things in the context of his experience. And we've got a guy who's 77. We've got a guy who's 74. My media showed me Trump again and again talking about herd mentality when he meant herd immunity. Herd immunity is when enough people have gotten COVID and become immune to it that the virus has a hard time spreading further through the population. Herd mentality is groupthink, when everybody's kind of forced to share the same kind of attitudes because otherwise, you get canceled by cancel culture. So Trump fucking screwed up that term. So anyway, basically what I'm saying is you got two guys in their 70s running for president. And if you want to, you can match, I'll take the guy who maybe has some pauses from time to time who's not an asshole over the guy who has some mental lapses from time to time who is an asshole.
Okay. First of all, I've made the suggestion about 5 times that you see the hairy leg speech. And it's only about 6 minutes long, and
okay, I'll watch it.
You still haven't seen it, so you're just talking out of your ass right now. And it would only have taken 6 minutes.
I don't know. I feel like maybe I have seen at least some of it.
I think I'm going to bring out the big guns now, Rick,
Okay.
because 4 years ago we had this argument, and I didn't want to bore people by bringing it up again, but I'm going to bring it up now because when you say that Trump is an asshole and Biden isn't an asshole, the person that was the architect of our defeat in Iraq, the one that caused us to pull our troops out and led to the rise of ISIS, who killed 250,000 people, that man was Joe Biden. Don't interrupt me. The man that destroyed ISIS, the man that took office, said, I will destroy ISIS, and he did. He killed 50,000 ISIS troops, and it no longer exists anymore. It's gone. The caliphate is gone.
The caliphate's gone. There's still plenty of. There's
Rick, I said, don't interrupt me. So on the one hand,
I can still fucking interrupt you.
Okay, well then, fuck you, Rick.
Okay.
We don't have a show here. Listen, here's the deal. The man that caused one of the worst military blunders, the most costly in human life in the history of the United States, he was the point man in the negotiations to withdraw those troops. He was the man that recommended to Obama that we could withdraw those troops and nothing bad would happen. And after he recommended that to Obama, who was, a part of it, of course, 250,000 people died. They were raped to death. They were burned to death. They were tortured. All of that was because of Biden's decision, the man you don't think is an asshole. And And Trump came in and destroyed that ISIS. He destroyed the caliphate. He destroyed their army. And you think he's the asshole. So in my opinion, Rick, your position is completely immoral. And I think that you have no ethics or morals whatsoever. You don't, I mean, as a human being, I'm sure you do. But in the ability to understand the difference between right and wrong in policy, you have no idea.
All right,
That's all I have to say.
All right, for the sake of argument, I'll give you that fucking pulling out was a blunder and that it led to the deaths of 250,000 people. Similarly, we will have close to 250,000 U.S. coronavirus dead by Election Day. And under Trump, 16,000 more Americans die per month under Trump than have died per month under any other president. And only 1/3 of those deaths are due to increased population. Obviously, more people are going to die per month than died under George Washington, because George Washington was only president of 1% of the population now. But still, more than 10,000 Americans die per month under Trump for reasons other than that we have a huge population. You've got COVID, you've got suicide, you've got opioid, you've got all this stuff. And Trump is basically the deadliest president in American history. Among the most, I call him the most incompetent president in U.S. history. That if you want to trade deaths for deaths, Trump doesn't get off the hook.
Actually,
700,000 more Americans have died in 44 months under Trump than in 44 months under any other president.
Did you say 700,000 people extra have died under Trump's presidency?
Yes, that's an unfair statistic because, let me put it in context, because as a liberal, I should be fair. Roughly in Trump's time in office, roughly, I don't know, 10 or 11 million people have died, because that's what happens in a country that has 330 million people. Roughly, 3 million people will die a year because, you lose roughly, I don't know, a little less than 1% of your population a year because people get sick and die, because that's what happens to people. So, maybe just to simplify it, maybe 10,700,000 people have died in this time period under Trump, compared to no more than 10 million people dying in a similar amount of time under any other president. The deaths are up, 7% overall. Life expectancy is down, I don't know, 2% overall, because we're living in a miserable time.
Okay. Rick, first of all, you're trying to fool people with statistics.
Oh, I just told them the fucking statistics.
No, okay, I'm going to respond now. You're accusing Trump of killing 700,000 people because of his policies, and that's just not. We know that during during 2020, it's very easy to see the effect of the China virus, okay? If you look at the year, we've lost something like, I'm going to say, between 15 and 25% more people than we would have at the same time last year, okay? So where do you get the other 500,000 deaths? I mean, let's say that all 200,000 deaths are China virus deaths, okay? And let's let's separate the issue of whether that's because of Trump. If Trump caused 200,000 people to die, let's just say, I'm curious now. You said 700,000 when we know that 200,000 people died from the China virus.
What I did
and that's 15 or 25% more than we would normally have. And by the way, some of those deaths were caused by the lockdown. And anyway, let's just stay with the numbers.
So you want to know where those numbers came from?
Where do you get the other 500,000?
You look at mortality figures. You look at how many people in America are dying every year, and you look at the death rate, the life expectancy has been going down in America for the past, 3 years, 5 years. Opioid crisis, suicides, obesity. There are lots of. I can.
And you're blaming these things on Trump, assuming that they are true.
No, I'm kind of blaming him in that I'm saying that more people have died under Trump than any other president, and it's beyond because the country's big now.
Yeah, but we only know of a 15 or 20% increase.
Trump promised, and I don't know if we should hold him to the promise because it's a tough problem, but Trump promised to fix the opioid crisis, but I don't think he's fucking fixed it, and people continue that's one of the major contributors to people dying young in America or younger than.
And you're saying
there's a lot of shit going on. There's massive.
You're saying we didn't have an opioid crisis under Obama?
No, I'm not saying that. I am saying that one of Trump's campaign promises was he was going to fix it. He made lots of promises. And I just said maybe it's not fair to hold him to that promise because it's obviously a huge intractable problem. But it hasn't gotten better under Trump. It leads to excess mortality. And not all the 700,000 excess dead are due to Trump. Trump didn't make 2/3 of American adults overweight or obese. But I'm saying that we were living in a miserable time. Americans are dying younger than they used to. And yeah, he's president for now. And yeah, some of the COVID deaths are due to his bungling of fucking COVID. And we've never had a successful infrastructure week. We've never passed any fucking structure. He promised that for years. And our roads and bridges are still for shit. He hasn't. So anyway.
So Rick, you respond to my argument with basically a series of wild arguments that are completely illogical. First, you tell me that a policy decision that Biden made for no good reason, and that is to pull our troops out of Iraq, and which led immediately to civil war, which was completely predictable by everyone, including
because
me.
They'd already been having a civil war for like 6 years.
Okay, so Rick, in 2011, there were fewer deaths in Iraq of American servicemen than there were in the United States. The country was pacified. I'm just bringing the viewers up to score on this. And Biden had the ability to leave 10,000 American troops there to keep the country from falling into chaos. But instead of doing that, he insisted that we pull out every single soldier, which he did. So 250,000 people died. Now, I let you talk, so don't interrupt me. On the other hand, we found out that the Chinese had created a virus that
No,
some
we didn't
people.
fucking find that out. That's bullshit. It's been debunked a
You're
million times.
interrupting.
The
No, it
virus
hasn't.
originated, but it wasn't fucking the Chinese doing lab work to create the fucking virus.
Yeah, actually, you don't know a damn thing about that, Rick. You have
Yeah, I
no
do
evidence
know it's
for
been
that
fucking
whatsoever.
debunked. You're talking
No, it
conspiracy
has
bullshit.
been.
It's
No,
the
no, I'm not.
teleprompter
No,
theory of
no,
fucking
no.
viruses.
All right, I'm going to talk now, okay?
Hmm.
The Wuhan Institute is the foremost institute that studies viruses from animals in the world. It it prides itself on taking viruses from bats, for example, and turning them into biological weapons. Now, there are scientists in China that have escaped from China that worked with those people, not necessarily in those labs, that say that this virus was man-made and was
Horseshit.
probably.
It's been all right.
No, it
Fucking go
hasn't
ahead.
been debunked. You
It
weren't
has
there.
fucking been
No, it
debunked.
hasn't been.
Look it fucking up
It, Rick,
read
Rick,
500 articles
Rick,
on it.
Rick. You are saying that a disastrous policy decision by Biden is the same as a virus being released into the United States. You're saying that the President Trump, is equally culpable.
No, I'm
And
not saying that.
and
I'm
what I'm
not
saying to
saying
you
that.
is the blame that Trump is getting for the China virus, it would be like blaming President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, for the Spanish flu. It's equally it's
It was
equally
Wilson. It was fucking Wilson.
more. Well, 1917, yeah, Wilson was president, very good. So I'm not blaming Wilson for the Spanish flu, and I think it's disingenuous of you to blame Trump for the China virus.
I'm not saying Trump is as culpable as Biden was. I'm saying he's way more fucking culpable. There's no equivalence. What Trump
Well,
did
actually,
is so much shittier.
There is evidence out there of how.
I was getting to that, Director. Yeah, the director's trying to help me by saying that Biden, we know how Biden handled the H1N1 virus. And it recently came out that the person that he put in charge, one of the people, said that the H1N1 virus went away because of sheer luck, that nothing that Biden did had any effect whatsoever on the swine flu.
We
And
have
that they were just,
vaccine.
the vaccine took 3 years, Rick.
Okay, but
And furthermore, as I've said to you on numerous occasions, maybe 10 times now, the most important decision that was made was when the president quarantined China and Europe.
yeah, but that
And
say it
you
100 times,
yeah,
but it's still fucking bullshit.
but Biden would not have done that. Instead, he accused Trump of racism.
Okay, so that okay.
So
you
in the
can
one
make a good point,
in the
but
one most important thing that the two presidents can be compared on, Biden would have done the wrong thing, and Trump did the right thing.
Trump did one tiny thing semi-right that really didn't affect much the trajectory of the fucking pandemic in America.
That's a lie. If the Chinese had been able to send 50,000 Chinese visitors from Wuhan to the United States, there would be millions dead right now.
We have 202,000 dead in America.
Yeah, I know. And it turns out that 40% of those deaths were caused by Democrat governors that insisted on putting people that had the virus into rest homes. 40% of those deaths were caused by Democrat governors.
That's
the governor
I mean, it's a wrong statistic. I don't know what it is, but it's less than 25%. And fucking one guy is the president, and one guy. The weight of the fucking pandemic and the office rests on one guy. And again, I ask, whose minds are you going to change? We know that Trump lied about not knowing how bad the pandemic was. He dicked around. He started getting briefed in November. It didn't get bad here for another 3-4 months, and he dicked around the whole time and pretended it wasn't going to fucking be bad, knowing that it was much worse than flu. And really, whose minds are you going to change? Who's going to be persuaded? Fucking that Trump didn't fuck it up.
Rick, I'm curious about why you can't be persuaded. Now, we know for a fact that the governors of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, where about half of the deaths occurred, or at least a quarter for a while, around 30, 40, maybe 70,000 people died. We know in New York alone. That's in
32,000
that's in New York alone.
So it's roughly 1/6 of all the deaths are in New York.
We know that the Democrat governors of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and Michigan insisted on putting COVID-infected patients into rest homes, which led to, they believe, 40% of the deaths in this country. Now, my question to you is this. Why can't you...
Shiny-headed from too much testosterone Dan Oingo Boingo talking on Alex Jones or OAN.
Well, why... Rick, Rick,
no, he doesn't fucking get any credit for, I mean, yeah, maybe a little bit, but how many lives did that fucking save?
Well, it did. Rick
said that there were as many lives as he fucking cost by dawdling for 10 weeks after he knew it was fucking going to kill a shitload of people.
Okay, so to our viewers, what's happening is this. The director is making reasonable arguments to Rick, and what Rick is doing is Rick is just saying fucking a lot and getting real loud in the hope that that'll convince
here's what
you.
the director said. The director said if Trump get any credit for sending hospital ships to New York and L.A. And I'm asking, how many lives did those hospital ships save?
And Rick, there is an answer. Rick,
if they, I'm not. The shit he did was fucking window dressing.
Rick. Listen to me very carefully, and please don't interrupt me.
The latest thing that came out was that the U.S. Postal Service had a plan to send 5 masks to every household in the U.S. in March or April at the peak of the thing so people could mask up, and Trump shut it down. Everybody could have had masks, but Trump didn't want to panic the country.
What he did was he sent masks to all the people that were vulnerable. They instead were selective. They sent masks to medical people and to rest homes and people. They targeted where they sent the masks.
Yeah, everybody in the country could have had masks, but Trump didn't want to panic the country. He didn't want to.
You can buy a mask. I've bought about 3 dozen of them, and I've always been able to get a mask, Rick, so don't worry about it. My point is this. The hospital ships that were sent to New York and the Javits Center, which was the largest hospital ever built, were thrown up in a couple of weeks. And the governor of New York and New Jersey chose not to use them. So the Democrats didn't put one patient in the Javits Center or the hospital ships. Instead, they sent those sick people into rest homes where tens of thousands of people were murdered deliberately.
Right. So don't elect the governor of New York president of the U.S. or the governor
I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Rick. I'm not going to elect the mayors of Seattle and Portland that let their cities burn down because I know Democrats are idiots.
How
I'm
many
not going
how
to.
many
I
buildings in Portland burned?
billions of dollars worth of
How many
destruction
buildings in
occurred.
Portland burned?
I don't know the number of buildings, Rick, but I know many people were killed. And I
35.
know, and I
35
knew.
people have died in the U.S. protests
Okay,
and riots in the past
okay.
6 months,
Do you
compared to
do you agree?
202,000
Do
people
you, do
dying
you,
of the fucking COVID.
do you agree that it was a good idea that the Democrat mayors and governors of Oregon and Washington ordered the police to stand down during the riots?
I don't know, but we've been going. We were supposed to go an hour.
No,
We've been
no, no, no,
going.
no. I want you to answer the question, Mr. Tough Guy, with your fuck you every 5 seconds.
I don't know. I don't know, but we can
You
talk
don't
about it.
know. You don't know. You don't know.
I don't fucking
You
know.
don't
No,
know.
I don't know.
Well, let me tell you something, Rick. The reason that your party are scum is because when Seattle and Portland was getting burned down and people were getting murdered on the streets of those cities, the Democrats ordered the police to stand down. That is undisputable. And the reason that the riots stopped is because Trump ordered in the police, ordered in National Guard, ordered in federal agencies to shut down the riots. That's the difference between my party and your party.
No, that sounds like at least half bullshit to me. You
Well,
guys
what
send
part
in
of
your
it is
bullshit
bullshit, Rick?
federal
What part of
troops.
it is bullshit?
That sending in federal fucking troops.
Yeah, he said in federal agencies.
It sounds like jackbooted thuggery from
Well,
a
that's what stopped the riots, Rick.
bullshit.
Why did the riots stop? You don't know, do you? They stopped because Trump sent in federal agencies that captured the
No, I think you're full.
ringleaders
I don't
of
know. I
the
just said I
riots.
don't know, but I think you're full of shit. But
Why do you? Well, listen, Rick, you can think any damn thing you want, but you need proof. Now, I have proof because it turns out, according to the Justice Department,
Bill Barr's Justice Department.
according to the Justice Department, 2,000 rioters were arrested by Trump since that whole shit began, and that's what stopped it. Not the Democrats that were in charge of Washington State and Oregon. The
Yeah,
Democrats
I
in
don't
those
buy it. I
states
don't buy
let
that.
it happen.
And I don't have to fucking buy it.
You don't have to because you're too prejudiced and lazy and bigoted to know what really happened. You're too ill-informed and zombie-like and brainwashed. You don't even know why it happened and why it stopped, and I just gave you evidence, and all you can do is sit there on the couch and say, I don't believe it.
Okay, and that seems like a good place to stop until Sunday. We've gone way over time.
All right, goodbye.
All right, thank you everybody for watching. If you want to throw, oh wait, one more fucking thing. I've made Twitter friends with a woman named Stephanie Reinish, who's in trouble. She's a teacher. She got in a car wreck 5 years ago, which led to disability, which is leading to her and her mom losing their home. And I said I would give her a shout out, which I'm doing right now, and then I'll discuss her more in a subsequent episode. So that's it. Thanks for watching. All right, so we're going to try to go twice a week until the election, the 6.5 weeks until the election. So tonight's show, which you'll know because you'll have watched it, will go up night of, so Thursday. And then the Sunday shows, our director will try to get up Sunday night, so we're current and topical. So thank you, director, and thanks for watching. Okay.